right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast. We're coming to you. This is we're a little over a week from college football now, if anybody else is counting. So by the time this episode hits the air, I think it'll be less than a week. So Paul, I mean, we're getting down into the short rows now.
Well, does the week 0 game count? Is it real college football? I say yes, it is. Even though it's not played in the United States, it is still college football. We're going to watch a couple of ACC teams. You know what? Now that I think about it, forget week 0. It's ACC football. Is that even real college football?
Yes. It just goes to show you like what how they rank or how they feel about ACC versus some SEC. Let's be real here. Like SEC doesn't even start until like the next weekend. Actually, the Thursday. I'll take it back. I think we got a couple of Thursday games for opening weekend, but. Yeah, week 0 is like, if you look at the lineup, we have that one ACC game in Ireland. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
then.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's it. Vandy sometimes plays on a week 0. They went on a run, like, was it last year, a couple of years ago? They won like 4 in a row. They went 4-0 for the first time in whoever knows.
Yeah, and then they played Alabama and we're talking a bunch of smack and lost 50-0. Yeah, I remember. No, so the season's starting, but is Thursday night. That's usually, I think South Carolina usually does that, and they're not a real team either. So I don't know, man. I'm excited. It's coming up. I can't tell you how excited I am. In fact, we got a piece of fan mail. I want to say thank you, Lee Thrasher, for the nice note and the magnet and everything. That was interesting though. The magnet had ACC and SEC schedules. Brother, you're wasting ink. Just put the SEC schedule on there and be done with it.
Yeah. What was the one that had like the NFL Monday night games or something like that too, which is better, than the ACC. But yeah, I put the SEC. The SEC side is proudly displayed next to my daughter's artwork on our refrigerator. So thank you very much, Lee Thrasher. We still don't know how he got our addresses. That is a little creepy, I think.
Actually, it's super creepy. Lee, we're going to need to discuss that. Please DM me for more details. But I tell you who loved the letter was my daughter. She saw it, and I put it on the table. I propped it up, and she read it. And she said, Dad, who sent you this? And I go, oh, that's one of our fans, honey. You have fans? She just thought it was the coolest thing we had a fan. I go, yeah, he wants to do... She said, what's he talking about in this part of the letter? I said, well, he wants to do a meetup when we get to... That's kid talk, by the way. Meetup is when you get to meet the fans of whatever show you're watching. I said, he wants to do a meetup when we get to Denver later this year. That's Concrete Works, everybody. If you're going, we'll be there. I said, yeah, he wants to do a meetup. Now she wants to go to Denver because she wants to meet Dad's one fan. So thank you, Lee. I appreciate you really putting a smile on my daughter's face.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was awesome. That was unexpected too, but that's he knows us. He knows us well enough to send us SEC football schedules to stick on the fridge. So
that's right. And also, if you know us well enough, then you know by now that Actigel, that's right, the great product Actigel 208 will help you in your concrete if you're trying to use more manufactured sand. Please, please, please don't be the only one. There are people calling. You have to call right now. Joey's schedule is packed. I think he's got literally 2 weeks free until Concrete Works. If you want one of those weeks to be for you, please give us a shout about putting man sand in your concrete. We're taking guys that are using 20, 30%, and they're using 100%. So the Actigel makes that happen. It's super affordable. In fact, most people are saving money when they make the switch. So reach out to us at info@activeminerals.com. You can also reach out to the Add 10 Gallons LinkedIn page, our personal LinkedIn pages for Joey Bell and myself, Paul Finley. You can find us there. Info@activeminerals.com. Put more man sand into your concrete with Actigel 208.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we've been busy, and the future is busy. So get on the Actigel train right now. So we'll take that we'll take the switch to concrete. We'll use Actigel as our switch to concrete now. And one thing I wanted to talk about, and I've seen this, I don't know when I first saw this. I think it's been at least a year, because I think I was thinking about doing this last summer, or at least wanting to try this method of pouring concrete. And I think a lot of people have heard of this, and they may have seen a couple videos on YouTube and whatnot. Well, Dr. Tyler Lay, he put out a couple videos on this method. Dr. Belkowitz, he had a short video on his LinkedIn where he was kind of just talking about it. And this is dry pour concrete. This is essentially where you take bagged concrete, pour it in a form, screed it out. You actually finish it, quote unquote, finish it with a paint roller, like just a bare, brand new out of the package paint roller. You can also use an edger, like around the edges to make nice round edges. And then you mist this dry concrete mix with water on the mist setting on the water hose. Mist it just enough to let it change the color. You let it sit an hour. You can then, if you want to, you can cover it in plastic. The couple of videos that I saw where they covered it in plastic, it was more or less just to keep chickens and birds and other varmints off of the slab, while it was trying to cure. But I can't imagine that covering it with plastic is going to hurt anything. Wait an hour, mist it once more, wait another hour, and then you switch to the shower setting on your water nozzle. And you soak this slab. You're not holding, the nozzle like right up against the slab. You're standing up, you got the nozzle at shoulder height or whatever, and you're waving it back and forth, and you're soaking this concrete slab. And you do that every hour, at least 2 more times. And I guess you can do it as long as you want to. It's not going to hurt it. And we'll get into why that much more water is not going to hurt this process. And so at the end of this process, you essentially have this slab of concrete that you didn't have to mix, like you didn't have to mix it in a wheelbarrow. You didn't have to rent a mixer. They said in a couple of, they kept saying in a couple of videos, like, you don't have to worry about, scheduling a truck, where if you're pouring a handful of bags of Quickcrete, you're not going to use that, you're not going to use a concrete truck for that anyway, because you're probably going to have like a $500 short load fee or something crazy, or whatever other policies. So you're not going to use a concrete truck for like a quarter of a yard of concrete. But after you do all this, you let it sit for 48 or 72 hours, and then you can pull the forms off. And like I said, theoretically, after all of this, you have just a concrete slab that was poured dry, and then you add water while it's in the forms.
Well, if you're like me and you're not really on social media and you are just now hearing about the fact that we're making concrete slabs out of powdered concrete. Yeah, that's right. You heard. Just want to make sure that was super clear. Yep. These people are opening bags of Quickcrete, dumping the contents of the bag onto the ground, unprepared ground. I know Joey's going to get into that some more in a minute. Yeah. Unprepared ground, and just leveling out the dry contents on the unprepared ground, and then adding water from a hose pipe from up top. That is not, number one, that's not how you mix concrete. And number two, my mind was blown because I saw the final results of these projects, and the slab looked incredible. It looked great, actually. And then they had one slab, it was like 18 months old, and there wasn't a blemish on the thing, and it had been supporting like a heavy chicken coop or something. So no, we're not talking about roadways and stuff. We're talking about like home DIY projects. But still, to see people not actually mixing the concrete blew my mind. And so Joey shows this to me. I don't even know what I'm looking at. Everything, that I've ever been taught, is getting like kind of turned on its head. But Joey said some people that we all know and love, like John Belkowitz and Dr. Tyler Lay, they kind of went a little bit further on this to answer some of these questions that I had and that Joey had. So, Joey, what was the first thing, some of the first questions you had, and what were some of the answers you found?
So, actually, my questions kind of came more after Dr. Lay's video, because he went in so into depth on, water content, cracking and rebar and paste aggregate bonding and everything like that. So I'm going to try to quickly go through what he did in his video. So he compared, wet mix was essentially his control. This was all bagged concrete. He went to Home Depot, got some bagged concrete. Mix the first batch just like you would, regular concrete. Add water, mix it, and then you cast it, you place it. The second batch was the regular dry pour method. And he did this in a clear it looked like a 4x8 cylinder. So you could see, the dry concrete, and you could see the water, as it made its way down through the slab. That was pretty cool. And so he did that with the same amount of water as the wet mix. He did track his water. So he did that, but he also did it, every hour, or he may have not even waited an hour with it just being a cylinder. He may have, waited X amount of time, add this water until he had no more water left to, add. The third one, he did the regular dry pour method, same amount of water as the wet mix, but he kept that cylinder in their misting room for the entirety the entire life of the cylinder, basically until they broke it. And then the fourth one, the final one, the dry pour method, same amount. They didn't have the same amount of water in there. They actually saturated that cylinder. So I forget. I don't know if he kept track of how much more water he added, but they basically kept adding water to this cylinder until basically it was puddling up and wasn't going to hold anymore. So, and like I said, he did all this into cylinders so he could break them. He'd put them in a break machine. The wet mix at 7 days broke at 2,800 PSI. I mean, no surprise there. That's what concrete is supposed to be breaking at. The regular dry pour was only 600 PSI, so a drastic reduction in strength. The dry pour plus the misting room broke at 800 PSI, so just a touch better. The dry pour plus the saturation of water was 1,200 PSI, which still isn't good. That's still 2.3 times, weaker than your wet pour. But 1,200 PSI, and remember, step back. This is like for DIY projects at home. You're not going to pour your driveway with this. You're not going to pour a garage with this. This is for, just like that video I sent you, chicken coops, dog kennels, just steps, like porches, patios, whatever. It's not structural. It's not supposed to hold anything.
But a lot of the things that we do around our house aren't structural. If I was pouring a fire pit and I just needed a level place to put the fire pit, or you just needed a place that I want to get my grill off the deck. I'd rather have it be beside the deck, but I don't want it sitting on the ground. Can I pour a pad? And then now you're talking about mixing in a wheelbarrow, how much water, setting up forms, if it's a big enough thing, like you're trying to do like something a little bit more extravagant, now you got to get a mixer and all this stuff, and how do I do that? And it's time and energy, and these folks are showing us that you actually don't have to do any of that. You just erect your form first, make sure it's level, fill it with the dry powder, screed it off so it's flat, and then just put water on top of it. If you do that, you'll have something serviceable. And the serviceable doesn't mean ugly. These pads were looking great. And you're telling me I can potentially get 1,200 PSI out of something that's just a foot pad? I mean, brother, sign me up all day long.
Right. Yeah, that 1,200 is, way more than you're going to be, way more than anything is needed in your backyard. Unless you have a lot of, big relatives. But
no, dude, no comment. I am not looking to.
We are from the South.
No, well, hold on, time out. In case you're listening, in case you're listening, lawyers, parody. So, just like as a little bit of background, like literally this week, as we're recording, our top management team turned all the new lawyers from Huber. They turned them on to the podcast. So now we've probably got like an army of lawyers listening to this. So Joey, I just want to say, as we finish up this segment, like, man, it's been really nice doing this podcast with you. And
we had a really good run. We hung on here for a couple months until the lawyers got us.
Yeah. Now the lawyers are on to us. So Nothing is going to change about this show at all. We welcome the lawyers, our new overlords. We hope you guys enjoy the show as much as the rest of the audience. And hey, look, if we magically don't show up one day, the lawyers finally caught up to us.
Yeah, they got us, man. But
hey, I'm sending them T-shirts. All right, maybe.
Okay.
We need them to be our friends. If you got any extra swag at your house, we need to. Yeah. I got their address. We're gonna send them all the swag. They are now our friends. See, if we make them our friends, then maybe they'll let us do this a little bit longer.
And we also know where they sleep now.
No. What? No, I'm sending it to the office. What are you even talking about?
Oh, I thought you had their home addresses. Like we were going to deliver this stuff to the front porch.
We're not Lee Thrasher finding people's home addresses and surprising them with them.
I guess if we want to find out their addresses, we'll contact Lee because apparently he's good at tracking people down. I first thought, when this stuff showed up at our doorsteps, that Lee probably had his wife do this investigative work, because I know if y'all's wives are anything like my wife, she needs to work for some either police, Federal Bureau of Investigation, something, because she can find anybody. I could tell her about some interaction I had with some person for 5 minutes back in kindergarten, and she's like, all I need is like a first name or something like that, and boom. I mean, she's got their whole, the whole report like ready for me within like an hour. It's something.
My wife can do the exact same thing. She's the greatest detective I've ever met in my life, and I tell her all the time she missed her calling. In fact, we're not even 40 yet. She could very easily change careers today. She's arguably the smartest person that I know, and if she took all that brain power and stopped making organic chemistry and stopped teaching kids how to be doctors and just go be a detective somewhere, I'm pretty sure that between her and Krista, we could solve most of the crime in this country.
Right. Yep. Put them on the payroll, FBI. Let's go. But
right, so back to making patios and footpaths in the most unconventional way ever.
Right. Luckily, I remember where we left off. It was like this is a miracle in itself. Me remembering anything, but we were talking about how slabs, these dry pour slabs are not going to be supporting any kind of weight. So it's not like you're building. You might could like build a shed on top of it, maybe. I think if you did absolutely everything right, you could do something like that. But as far as, cars or, any kind of vehicle traffic, I'm not going to, build a shop, this way or anything like that.
One of the questions I had, though, I did not see Dr. Lay's video. So just correct me if I'm wrong here. When he was doing his testing, dry mix versus wet mix, he didn't pour any slabs. He only put everything into a cylinder. Am I correct?
Correct. He did. The only other test that he did do was it was a beam where they measured cracking. It was a cast beam with a piece of rebar in it, and they tested the size of the crack and the force that was needed to make that concrete crack. They did test that.
Do you have those results in front of you? Do you remember what those results were? How it compared?
I remember. I don't have the exact numbers, but I will tell you, like when he did that beam test with the rebar and everything, the dry pour crack was like 10 times wider than the wet mix crack. And also the wet mix obviously bonded so much better to the rebar, and the dry pour did not bond at all. So when he was able to break, I think he either broke or cut this beam open and removed that rebar. In the wet mix, it was a nice imprint of rebar, and with the dry mix or the dry pour, it was basically non-existent. It looked like a dowel in there. There was no you couldn't see the texture of the rebar.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think those of us that play with concrete all the time, that kind of makes sense,
Yeah.
But the reason I was asking about how he measured the strength, all the videos that you sent and like the affiliated links that went with those videos, they seem to show that people weren't pouring things 8 inches thick. So when you're telling me he's doing like an 8-inch thick cylinder, it's like, yeah, well, maybe that's not the right thing to be testing. Maybe we should have been testing slabs that were like 4 inches, and then we could have cored them. And from the core, maybe we're testing something that's more along the lines of like 3 to 4 inches tall, after grinding. So maybe we make a 5-inch slab and then we'll grind it down to 4-inch cylinder. But I think that might be more representative of what our audience is going to be doing. If they want to go try this method for themselves and they want to do a little patio, your strength may even be higher than what Dr. Lay was getting with these 8-inch cylinders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he broke these cylinders, you know, he was looking at how they broke or where they broke.
Yeah, watching the fracture pattern, which all the trained concrete QA guys on this call, they're listening to this right now, know exactly what we're talking about. Trying to record. Was it a type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 break? What kind of break are we looking at?
Yeah, and it wasn't even that. It was more that did it break through the rock or not? Like, was the paste stronger
it was the
than
paste.
The rock?
Yeah, exactly.
And in the wet pour, you know, conventional cylinder, the rock broke. It broke at the rock, which means obviously the paste was stronger, so it was proper concrete. This dry pour, you know, there was no rocks at the break. You know, it essentially crumbled throughout the paste. So that was not surprising. But another thing that he tested or he observed that I didn't think about is he was talking about air channels in the concrete, not like micro air bubbles like when you put air in concrete, but just air channels. And what he was getting at is, you know, when you mix, you know, regular concrete mixed in a drum or whatever, when you cast that, when you pour that in the slab, there are no like air voids. Like, obviously there's going to be micro air bubbles, you know, air entrainment and trapped air, whatever. But there are no literal air channels. Like, air is not trying to escape the concrete when it's being poured. It's just a nice homogeneous paste and aggregate. With dry pour, so you're pouring water from the top. And when you're pouring water from the top, that air that is in amongst all the aggregate, the cement particles, you know, just those air voids in that dry powder mix, that air has to go somewhere. So as you're pouring water on this slab, and Dr. Lay had a visual of it. So as they were adding water to this cylinder, you could see the bubbles like coming up around the edge of the cylinder. And so when that happens, and he was saying also, when you start putting enough water, like that last test where he saturated that cylinder, it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as noticeable because it was trying to create more of a paste because there was so much water. But if you don't put enough water in there, you're going to have these voids, these pockets of air in this dry mix slab. And of course, where there's no water or where there's not as much water, that's just going to create a weak spot and it's going to crack and crumble right there. So that was interesting. It was something I didn't think of. And I guess I've never really thought of anything like that because we're always mixing wet concrete and pouring it in a slab or pouring it in a form. So yeah, that was super interesting. But I did have a couple questions after watching Dr. Lay's video. And one of them that is what you and I talked about, I think, before we hit record. Would your sub base make a difference? You know, in the video I sent you, they cast it just on plain dirt and grass.
On grass, yeah.
Grass, dirt, you know, they just dug it out just enough to kind of level it out a little bit. And they dug out a little bit around the edges to create, quote unquote, like a footer. But if you had a stone sub base that was compacted down, you know, like a jackrabbit or a tamper or something like that, and you saturated that stone with water, and then you poured your dry material in there and screeded it off and did, you know, the whole process, would that make a difference? Because casting it just on, you know, dirt, grass, whatever, I think it's trying to absorb water from the bottom, but it's probably not going to get very much. And so, unless you're adding a bunch of water, if you're able to add as much water that's needed from the top, then it's not going to hydrate properly on that bottom part of the slab, or even, you know, that last quarter of the slab depth. So I was wondering that, and I didn't find an answer to it. That's just a question.
Well, I think there's like three things here. Number one, the method that we're talking about isn't meant for like proper concrete.
Right.
This is we're got to keep emphasizing this is for a footpath around your house, or a place to put your grill, or a front ramp just into your side door of your house or something. So super easy stuff that anybody could do. So that leads into number 2, which I think there's a lot of proper construction methods that could take place to enhance the concrete that we're talking about. And number 3, one of the things that hurts my brain about this method, and you sort of touched on it there a little bit, is the uneven hydration that's taking place. And how many times are we telling people in this business, not me and you literally, but how often is the industry talking about how properly curing concrete? And these people are doing the exact opposite of that. The humidity levels throughout the depth of the slab are completely different because the moisture levels are different. The set times are going to be different between the top and bottom of the slab. The temperature variances that go along with that because of the introduction of the water. We're just assuming the water might be colder than ambient temperature or the material temperature. All of these things that we're going to try and regulate, they're not doing. So when you're like, oh, could we have sub-base? Like, that's a construction method. Like, yeah, would also be awesome. Let's say we're not mixing it. It would also be awesome if, like, on the edge of the Z forms, they took a pencil vibrator and they could vibrate the powder and get some of that air out that you're talking about. And then as they wet this, and maybe you don't have to vibrate it again after you wet it. Maybe you could. Who knows? But yeah, so I think there's a lot of proper concrete construction techniques that could help this. I just don't think that's what they're going for. They're going for like the down and dirty.
Yeah, I mean, there's no ACI. There are no ACI regulated. There's nothing. ACI is nowhere to be found, in people's backyards. So this is strictly DIY.
DIY wouldn't even do a driveway with this. Like,
I wouldn't drive
that kind
on
of thing.
No, absolutely not. But after all that is said, let's say we do have a good sub base. It's it's properly saturated or whatever, and we compact this dry material. We do all of these things. At the end of the day, after you do all that, shouldn't you have just mixed it in the wheelbarrow to begin with? Like, it's almost like when we're trying to church this thing up by like having a nice sub base and compacting it and everything else. It's like no, we're making a bologna sandwich out of a brioche bun or something like that. It's almost like just mix it and be done with it.
Now that you say that, I don't think I've had a bologna sandwich on anything but white bread. Like,
yeah,
the 25-cent Wonder Bread from the store. Yeah.
I think it's against the law in the South to have a bologna sandwich on something other than light bread.
But hey, if you're laughing right now at bologna sandwiches and you haven't had a fried bologna sandwich, then that's on you. Number one, for missing out on life. And after you have one, if you had it, we'll all meet up at Joey Bell's house. We'll have some fried bologna sandwiches down on the farm. Yeah, I think this is actually pretty neat. When you first sent me this and I looked at it, my instinct was to call the cops on these people. I didn't like it at all. Everything in me wanted to be against this 100%. But when I got to the end of it, I was like, you know what? Like, if they want to do this around their house, anybody that's listening wants to do this around their house, go for it, man. Join the world of concrete. Do it your way. I then saw it was supposed to be like a funny clip of some people who had taken bags of Quikrete. They didn't even open them up. They just laid them like end to end and saturated them. They all got super hard, and they made it for like it was like a roadway for like construction vehicles. So it was going to be temporary anyway, and they were just trying to do some soil stabilization, and they were just like, all right, and just laid. It was hilarious. It was like they almost used them as pavers, and they were like, this is an 8,000 psi mix. We're assuming we have 8,000 psi pavers here, and it's just like they didn't even take them out of the wrapper, man. It was funny. It was funny.
Wow, man, yeah, that's awesome. But it's. Just like we said, it is not meant for anything other than the backyard. Put your grill on it, walk on it, set on it. Don't build nothing on it. Don't drive on it. I am gonna try it. I'm gonna make a little step thing or a step off or what, I don't even know what you call it, for my back deck. And maybe I'll try the video part of it and do something with it, make something out of it.
No, you're fine. I want you to get that done before we record next time, so we can have a follow up segment on this. And you don't even get a chance to rebut what I'm saying. You have to do that. And so now I'm gonna roll right in. We were gonna do a segment on a new OSHA ruling, but we have a really good interview. I'd like to jump into that. So before you introduce our guest, I want to first say again, thank you to Lee Thrasher. Thank you to the lawyers. We welcome you to the audience. We hope you enjoy our show. And with that, Joey, why don't you tell the people who our great and powerful guest is this week?
Yeah, if looking back at, I was thinking about this earlier. Looking back, in a fraternity in Alpha Gamma Rho that Paul and I were a part of, we had what was called stud numbers, and your stud number was basically the order in which you went through the fraternity. So my stud number was 434. I was the 434th person to be a part of Alpha Gamma Rho at Middle Tennessee State, and I believe yours was 437.
Good, right? Wow, very nice memory. 437.
So yeah, and if the CIM program had stud numbers, this man would be number one because he was the first person to walk across the stage at Middle Tennessee State with a concrete industry management program degree. And that is none other than Mr. Chris Davenport with Southern Concrete Machinery. We dive into, the beginning, those early days of the CIM program, and we talk about concrete plants, which is, something that his company is heavily involved in, technology, economy, what the future holds. I mean, we go down a couple of rabbit holes, but they're all very good. So y'all stay tuned, and here is Chris Davenport with Southern Concrete Machinery. I'm here live on location with Mr. Chris Davenport. He is the president of Southern Concrete Machinery, and he is also the first student, the first graduate that walked across the stage with a CIM degree from MTSU. Chris, how we doing?
Doing wonderful. How you doing today, sir?
We are excellent. We got Paul joining us from far away in Philly. Paul, you doing all right?
Well, I wish I was down south in land of the free, home of the brave, but I'm up here as we entertain the masses in the Philadelphia world, and just honored to speak to a legend, the very first guy to walk across the stage with that CIM degree.
Yeah.
I don't know about a legend, man. Hey, sometimes, timing is a lot. Just the timing was perfect back in 96.
That's right.
Well, and as you said, technically the alphabet was right too. So you literally got to be the first person across the stage.
Correct. Exactly.
Well, we won't mention that anymore. We'll just keep giving him a lot of credit.
That is real gray, boys, and that comes from cement and old age.
Yeah, this industry will age you. We know that. But I guess we can start there. Tell us about those early days of the concrete industry management program here at MTSU. Like, what are some of the things that you guys studied back then that maybe is different from what we got going on now?
That's an interesting question. Back then, there was no textbooks per se. We had what was the one book that we used? The PCA's Design and Control of Concrete Mixtures. That was essentially the Bible, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I know it's kind of sacrilege to say.
No, that's exactly what we call it.
Everybody refers to it as.
Yeah, that's what we call it.
There was no structure. We was obviously an organic startup, if you will, from an educational perspective in a program. That program was brought to MTSU by the RMC 2000 initiative. I believe I'm correct in stating that. That was an educational initiative set up by the RMC Foundation and NRMCA. And so our first classes, if you will, at MTSU, there was two of us in the first two students in the program. It was myself and Alan Brown. And then we eventually got a total of 7 students in the program. We all graduated in May of 2000. So those first years were very much small classes. Really no structured syllabus because it was all new. The curriculum had been put together by an industry focus group, the patrons, if you will, and the NSC was very much in an infancy stage there, but there was no selection of courses per se. Like we were kind of told this is what you got to go do in certain areas. But the relationships that we've been able to gather since then, I still remain in contact with the vast majority of those guys. Alan's a financial advisor for Edward Jones here in Murfreesboro, doing good for himself, and the other 5 gentlemen, a lot of them are still actively involved in the industry. We do business with quite a few of them, but great guys to be a part of that initial setup of the program, and it's been amazing to see. It's hard to believe we've been doing it out for 25 years now, but to see how all those young men have grown into respected professionals in each one of their industries that they focus on.
Mm-hmm. Well, for some of the specific things you can remember that you guys studied, I know you got the PCA book,
Mm-hmm.
you got the Bible there. Was there anything in particular that kind of stood out that you remember just doing? Either did you have like were there labs? Did you have any kind of lab work, or what'd you guys do all day? I guess is what I'm asking.
We did have lab work. A lot of the times, we were out going to industry events trying to promote the program as ourselves. So not only were we students in the program, but we were kind of working as ambassadors for the industry, going out and trying to promote the fact that Middle Tennessee State University has a 4-year degree in concrete industry management. So that there was a lot of that traveling going around, going to the World of Concrete, going to NRMCA shows like we still currently do, but it was really strong then. And trying to get out and promote the program and to grow it in any fashion that we could. But one thing that really sticks out to me was the gentleman that was in charge of the program at that time was a gentleman by the name of Austin Chaney. And Austin Chaney was kind of green, if you will, to the concrete industry. So he had to take in a lot of information and absorb a lot of contacts so that he could kind of direct us and point us in the right direction for each one of our personalities, if you will, and our skill sets to really hone us as young, malleable men. But the one thing that I really remember was a gentleman by the name of Bob Elliott, and he came in, he worked for Lafarge at the time, and he facilitated a logistics class on how to order concrete and the understanding the logistics of how trucks were going to come in and out and everything. And that was one of the things that kind of interests me initially was he brought up the analogy of an air traffic controller at an airport and how a dispatcher was very similar in that regard. That was really the main thing, I think, in those infancy stages of those classes. One thing that still sticks into my mind when I'm talking to ready-mix producers about ingress and egress of truck traffic or whatever coming into their facility, I always can go back to that guest lecture that Bob Elliott did, and that kind of it makes me feel good that was part of the conversation and just one of the memories that I truly hold from that early stages there.
And it's something that you use, just like you said, probably almost daily when you're dealing with concrete companies and plants. And we're going to get into Southern Concrete machinery and what you guys do as a company. But we'll stay talking about CIM. So what initially drew you to CIM? Like what were your plans? Like what drew you to concrete?
That's a funny story in itself, and I hope we got enough time for this. I had no idea what concrete was per se. I obviously knew it was a building material that got hard, and and there was a distance. I knew the difference between concrete and asphalt, but I really had no idea of the vastness and the diversity within the concrete industry. I had no clue. I didn't know that there was a difference in sidewalk concrete, bridge concrete, sky-rise concrete, lightweight concrete, heavyweight concrete. I had no idea. We just, you just use the term concrete per se. So what drove me to get into the concrete industry was I graduated high school from Oakland here in Murfreesboro in 1995 and took a job at Haynes Brothers Lumber. And I was working on a lumber yard. And I decided I wanted to take some time off. I didn't want to go right into school, right into college, if you will. Wasn't even for sure that college was the right path for me. So I took some time off, and then I was actually out And this is a funny story because there's pictures that float around the CIM program of myself when I came back to accept my scholarship in '96. Because I'd gotten a call. I was actually out traveling with some buddies. We were out partying, and I was at Lollapalooza up in Eastern Tennessee. Rage Against the Machine was the band at the time, my favorite rock band. And my mother called me and said, this may not be technically true, but this is what I can remember. She called me and she said, Christopher, as everybody that knows me, my whole life's calls me, Christopher, you've been awarded a scholarship to Middle Tennessee State. I need you to sober up and get back home. So kind of shake the cobwebs off from the night before and came back. And that was all done by a very good friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Ward Poston, who was one of the top 3 founders of the program locally. And that was Ward Poston, Bob Elliott, who I'd also mentioned, and a gentleman by the name of Jim Speakman, who our fundraising golf tournament is named after, is Jim Speakman. So those 3 guys were really the grassroots behind the MTSU adopting that program. Mm-hmm. And so Ward had reached out to me and my mother and said that there was a concrete program at MTSU getting started and that he wanted to help me get involved in that. And I can't say I'm the brightest man in the world, but I knew from the get-go that if it was an upstart program at a university that you had an opportunity to get on the front end, that there's probably a pretty good chance you could be successful with it. Mm-hmm. So after having some conversations with my mother and even Ward, I went and met with Ward and talked about his daily functions, what he did with his company. I decided, I'm going to do this. I really want to do this. I knew there was an opportunity there. And being raised by a single mother, where I saw her work 5 and 6 days a week, just for me and my sister to have, for me to have a nice pair of Jordans and just to take care of stuff, it was critically important for me to get a college education paid for and not put that burden upon her or on myself. So that was the main reason, was to make sure that I got a 4-year bachelor's degree. And it really, at that point in time, didn't matter if it was in concrete or whatever. It's just I knew for a fact that this was the mechanism by which was going to allow me to have that opportunity, and that in turn would not only make my life better with a college degree, but number one, it make my mom happy that her son was able to graduate college. So that's how it got started, and it's been an unbelievable growing experience. It's hard for me to believe, even rationalize and think about where we started at to where we're at today. That growth has been exponential, and it wouldn't have been. I would not be where I am today if it wouldn't been for the help of a lot of other men and women and some leadership that I needed during every young man goes through some trying times, if you will. But the mentors that I had, particularly in Ward Poston, Bob Elliott, and my late good buddy Jim Speakman, really steered me in the right direction, and has really been able for me to grow into the man that I am today.
Very good. What so back then, kind of, what were the plans for you guys after graduation? Like, what kind of careers did you envision when you had these concrete degrees?
I mean, initially, when the program was started, it was designed to set up middle managers in the ready mix business. Obviously, you're having a lot of. There was a hard time, and it still is today, that our industry is a graying industry, and it seems like it happens every 5 to 10 years. But we always hear the sayings that there's going to be a vast amount of departures the next 3 to 5 years. And it seems like that's said over and over and over again. But that was really the case when the program was started. So everybody had the idea that they were going to work at a ready-mix company. Some guys, had the aspirations of selling cement or selling rock. But really the focus was to create that middle manager's college-educated, university-educated middle manager at a ready-mix company. Now, granted, ready-mix companies back then were vastly different than they are today. I mean, we've seen the ready-mix industry go from a traditional, manual labor type of industry to where now we're in the Googles, if you will, the Apples, if you will. No, that type of those companies are out there where they're very marketable, and social media was not a thing back then. Thank gosh we did not have smartphones, or I would not be sitting here today. And I can attest that there's going to be some individuals that's going to listen or watch to this, and they're going to agree with the like and subscribe with the comments down below, and those individuals will agree that if that was the case, there'd probably some of us that would not be here today. But it's those are good times, man. Those are good times.
Were they still batching concrete with levers and scales and everything like that back then?
Still do it today.
Oh, I've still seen a few.
Matter of fact, I had a call this morning from a good a customer of mine over in Western Tennessee, and his auto control broke today, and he called me and says, "Chris, this auto control's not working," and I said, "Buddy." It ain't worked in 20 years, man. Like, we're going to have to get you a batch computer soon. So that's, there's still a lot of plants were based upon manual levers and controls. Mm-hmm. But they also had, which was one of the very first batch controls, was an auto control. And there's a few of them out there today, but you can't find replacement parts. It's very challenging. So one of the, reverting back to one of the questions you had asked earlier is we had a professor by the name of Joe Fulks.
Yep. Paul and I had him.
Joe,
as well.
Joe was great. Joe was absolutely the best professor that a young man could ask for in this upstart industry, because Joe knew everything. He was very astute in the concrete industry, but his teaching style was that of you figure it out yourself.
He would, if I remember correctly, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, he would sit upon that stool in the front of the class and he would just start talking. And that was our class.
That was it.
We had no textbook, and that was it. He just started rolling on there.
Yeah, and you talk about go figure it out yourself. His actual phrase to us in 2006 was, "Go outside, there is a mini batch plant set up, and I want you to get intimate with every piece on that batch plant." And Joey and I literally went out behind the lab, climbed up on every part of that thing to figure out what each piece, each clamshell bucket, where does that go? There's a load cell here. What's that for? We got intimate with that batch plant.
Yeah.
Well, you getting intimate with that batch plant's why we had to have it refurbished. This thing was rusted and wallered out. So you boys just... I know how you ag boys are. Right?
Yeah, I let him know we were AGRs when we were on the way back over here. And he was like, yeah.
We just now did have that miniature batch plant. I was able to get that batch plant donated to the university by Conoco McNeilis at the time. And we just now had it refurbished. And I cannot thank Aztec Industries out of Chattanooga, Tennessee enough for donating the funds, the resources, and the manpower to refurbish that. We just set it back up at the new building this time last year, probably. Mm-hmm. So that thing has been completely ran over, redone, and looks great right now.
And it's a functioning batch plant.
No, it's not functioning.
Oh, is it not?
No,
I thought it was for some reason.
No, it's not functioning. It would cost, it would literally cost a couple $100,000 to make that dude function.
Wow.
I mean, if you really wanted to batch concrete with it to try to get everything done, but no, I don't necessarily think that we need that. And number one, if it's functioning, we got to deal with air permits. We got to deal with all this, and we've got wonderful local suppliers, from the biggest companies in North America to the small mom and pops in and around the area. So if we need something, we can get it done. We don't need to have that headache on John or anybody over there at the university. Can you imagine dealing with an air permit or a stormwater prevention plan on a piece of state property? That'd be a challenge.
Well, that was one of our classes, like the one, I forget if it was 4060 or which one of the CIM classes, basically built around stormwater pollution and prevention plan. And what a massive headache. I knew right then that regulatory was not for me.
Correct. 100%. 100%.
So let's so you graduate, you're your first guy across stage with a CIM degree. What do you do next? What do you do after graduation?
That was a fun process, I can tell you. If I've ever had an idea of what free agency or what these new NIL numbers were, that was very similar to how it was during that first time, because we had done a very good job of promoting ourselves across many different aspects of the industry. But the industry itself, through the RMC 2000, the NRMCA, and other professional organizations, had really done a good job of touting what the potential would be for a CIM graduate to hit your employer. So when and still today, that the vast majority, I think we're at 100% graduation rate. If you graduate with a CIM degree, you're pretty much guaranteed a job. Now, there's some who graduate and choose not to work in the industry.
Yeah.
But if you want to work in the industry, you're going to have that job. So when I graduated, I had 9 serious job offers.
Wow.
Which, back in 2000, that was hard to fathom. I mean, you're very lucky to have 1 or 2 job offers, not to mention 9. So I went through the interview process. I flew around the country, and look, I was lucky enough that on a lot of these trips, I was able to take my mentor, Ward Poston, with me to kind of, help me diagnose and access, if you will, the job offers to see what fit best for me. And I took his professional opinion very seriously, but I elected to go work for a company that you guys very well know, Master Builders Technologies.
Mm-hmm.
I took a job in Des Moines, Iowa. I left Nashville, Tennessee, and me and my father drove that 14 hours to Des Moines, Iowa. And I worked for Master Builders. The gentleman that I worked for had been a legend in the state of Iowa. His name was Chuck Lukenbill, from Indianola, Iowa. And he took me under his wing and showed me how to sell chemicals the first 6 to 9 months there.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in West Des Moines off of E.P. True Avenue. Met a lot of great people in Iowa, some that I still maintain close contact with, good customers. And then I had an opportunity to grow, because we was able to grow the territory, grow the business there, that I got an opportunity. And you say an opportunity, it's kind of funny I say that. I moved to Champaign, Illinois, and lived in central and southern Illinois, lived in Champaign. And I was there for a year to year and a half and grew that business. And Master Builders wanted us to have a bigger opportunity, so they moved me to Dallas-Fort Worth. And I lived in Dallas-Fort Worth for about 2 years, growing the business there. Had a lot of good times in Dallas-Fort Worth. Met a lot of good people. Had an opportunity to really grow as a person and as a business-minded individual. And then we left. 2004. I left. I didn't get tired of selling admixtures. I got tired of getting moved around every 12 to 18 months. I mean, when you're successful and they can put you into another position, they're going to put you in that position. But I was very thankful for every opportunity, because I felt like I seized every opportunity that was bestowed upon me. But I knew that was not going to be the best for me. So around then, I was really, frankly, we had a conversation at lunch earlier. I got tired of missing birthdays, missing family events, and hearing my buddies talk about being out on our farm or whatever and shooting a turkey. And I'm sitting over here like, what in the Sam's hell am I doing over here by myself? And they was actually wanting me to move to Lubbock. They was trying to push me out further west. And I'm like, God, man, what have I done to have to move to Lubbock, Texas here? I mean, the only thing good in Lubbock, Texas is the blue light. Blue light on a Thursday night is a good time. I can tell you that.
Well, if nobody's been to Lubbock, Texas, you have the university, and then if that's it. Like
That's it.
there's nothing else, and there's nothing else for hours in any direction. It is the middle of nowhere.
You got to drive to Tucumcari, New Mexico to have a good burrito out there. Like it is, it is a thing, man. So I know we're rambling on, but that's where I was at. I worked there for 4 years, and it's amazing how things work in kind of a full circle situation. There was a good friend of mine who I had converted over. He was W.R. Grace customer at the time. Their company had been a Grace customer for 60 years. I converted them over to a Master Builders account, which was one of my biggest successes in Central Illinois. Well, they were in the market for expanding their ready mix business, so they were shopping for a concrete. And the gentleman that had went to call on him about a concrete plant was wanting to expand his business. He was wanting to get into Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas. And I was with the Barnes Industrial Group. And my good friend had recommended that if you're really wanting to expand your territory in the South, you need to call Chris, because he knew that I was trying to get back get back south, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim reached out to me. He flew out to Fort Worth. And he and I had a conversation, multiple conversations, of course. And he made me a job offer. And I still today, when I think about it, I'm bamboozled that I actually did it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of the best decisions I've ever made was actually jump out of an airplane with no parachute.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, that's what I did. I was 23 years old, 22, 23 years old, and was doing very well for myself at that age. The job that Jim offered me was no salary, 100% commission.
Ooh.
But the world is your oyster, Chris. The skies are blue. Go get it. And the old adage of that if you want a salary, you just want to be a deadbeat. If somebody offers you a salary, they just shot your goals down. And that's how it was sold to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to realize what they were getting at.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, essentially what they're telling you is if you're going to gamble on somebody, who are you going to gamble on? You're going to gamble on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I truly believe in myself. I'm a very confident individual. So I did it. I took a job that had no guarantee, but was 100% interest. And I knew that I was going to have to dive in head first into a market that I didn't know nothing about. I mean, I've been selling admixtures for 4 years. I'd been to hundreds of concrete plants. But at that point in time, I couldn't tell you the difference between A, B, C, and D. I just knew it made concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So that was I can tell you, man, as successful as we are, there's been a complete receptacle of that, if you will. Reciprocating is the correct word. Feelings there, because there was days that I was kicking myself in the tail thinking, what in the hell have you just done, man? Like, I mean, I tell my sales guy, Corey, all the time, it's like, man, we try to hunt elephants. I mean, that's what we do is we're trying to go after the biggest ticket item that the ready mix producer needs.
Mm-hmm.
And the key about a concrete plant is the concrete plant is the heartbeat of an organization.
Mm-hmm.
The trucks are just the veins that deliver the product. If your heartbeat is not strong and not set up for all of the veins, all the capillaries, all the avenues by which you need to deliver your product, you're going to be inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big deal to go from, having a good salary, having some commission, to going to where you had to be a self-starter and go out there and make that happen.
Wow. Does the amount of, equipment, concrete plants and stuff that you guys sell, or the lack thereof, like if you guys have a pretty slow period, can you kind of sense that something's on the horizon, or is it just case by case, company by company kind of thing? Like, do you have slow periods and then following that there's economic turn of some kind?
100%. I can't say that we can predict things. I think there's some intuition that comes into it by just seeing some historical purchasing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like we're dealing with right now, it's not slowing down, but it has subsided.
Okay.
And that normally happens in a presidential election year.
Okay.
Typically 4 to 6 months out from an election, there is a lull of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, we've not experienced. We've been on a 10-year run in the ready mix business,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been on a 10-year run. And in historically, we would typically see a swap out of ready mix plant purchases versus of truck purchases.
Mm-hmm.
So you would typically see like a 3-year run where they would buy trucks, and really no plants. And then you'd see plants. Then there would be a lull on the plants, and it would go back to trucks. But I can't say that we've seen that the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
The last 10 years, we've really started seeing more mobile job site specific plants being
Mm-hmm.
purchased instead of a true stationary stacked up transit mix or central mix plant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we can predict, but we can see, we end up seeing the market probably 24 to 36 months out from what a traditional material supplier will see,
Mm-hmm.
because our purchases are based upon lead times.
Yeah.
So with lead times being out as far as they are, we have to be ahead of the game for what any project comes
Mm-hmm.
up. So, and I say that I feel like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, but now when it gets back to the portable mobile jobs, those are typically purchased like now. I got to have it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a job got let, a job got it awarded.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit different than a traditional ready mix plant where a guy's want to expand and build another ship to,
Mm-hmm.
which takes the permitting process. On these mobile jobs, those permits seem to get pulled
Mm-hmm.
by somebody else versus out of a traditional ready mix producer.
Mm-hmm. That's the portable is how I got my start when I graduated, and I went to work for Atlantic Contracting. We did airfield paving, runways, taxiways, and the portable plant traveling circus deal. I was in a different place every week, so I'm always excited to hear about the portable plants and what's going on with them. What's different? Like, what's the latest and greatest as far as concrete technology in the plants? Like, what's on the horizon, or what are you seeing that's new, that's kind of starting to take off?
Obviously, I can't say that there's any new technological advance. Because at the end of the day, we're making concrete.
Yeah.
Any concrete plant can batch concrete,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about how effectively and how efficiently that concrete plant manufactures and batches the concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention how clean that plant batches the concrete.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when we're having these conversations with, say we're talking to an upstart guy who doesn't have any existing facilities.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times their mindset's not about, they're just concerned about the cost.
Right.
They want to get in as cheap as they can. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is a asset intensive industry. The cost of entry is pretty high, so when we start talking about getting in those situations, it's a complete different conversation than that if I'm over here trying to talk to the biggest guy on the street
Mm-hmm.
about what their plans are. So it's interesting that you can do things with technologies on a concrete plant, but to me, are they really beneficial?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, we're still trying to load. We want to load a ready mix truck as
Mm-hmm.
fast as we can,
Mm-hmm.
as safe as we can, and as clean as we can. So a lot of times you don't get all three.
Right.
You can see a fast batching plant. Well, yeah, it's fast, but it's dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now they got to take into account that they're going to have 4 to 6 hours cleaning that dude up every afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about trying to get your head around the true market by which the producer's going at and getting them a piece of equipment that fits their production demands today, but also can give them some production to grow to. Because as I said earlier, the trucks are going to come and go.
Mm-hmm.
If you got 15 trucks, I can promise you probably ain't running all 15 of them every day.
Right.
There's one or two of them that's broke down.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's been wrecked because Johnny done hit a mailbox. So now you're running at about 80% efficiency. So there's things there that where we just have to know our customers and truly what they want and demand out of a piece of equipment. So to point blank answer your question, there's technologies that are out there that are making concrete plants run more smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, on our low profile style plants, our low pros, we use a VFD to control the the discharge of the scale.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more futuristic, if you will, than what a traditional gate style plant would be.
Mm-hmm.
The mixers these days on a central mix plants, they're controlled by VFDs, which makes it a lot cleaner application because we got that much more control over the speed and discharge of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what you can do with cameras today.
Mm-hmm.
Cameras really help out in getting a human out of a precarious situation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things out there per se, but that's really handled through the IT perspective
Right.
instead of a true production scenario or
Mm-hmm.
a production manager. I mean, obviously they're going to be doing what they got to do with their IT. But when it comes for us, designing, having manufactured, erecting, installing, and make field operational of a ready mix plant, it ain't changed that much.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a lot of steel and a lot of hydraulics.
A lot of steel, hydraulics,
yeah.
air over electric.
Yeah.
And there's big differences between the manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
And the vast majority of our competitors are our colleagues and our friends. I have a lot of respect for them, and we're always going to handle our business above board. And but there's some big differences between the two. And I know this isn't a commercial to really start talking about that, but there's some significant differences between manufacturers, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just proud that I can say that I've been marketing and selling and representing Conoco batch plants for 20 years now, and Conoco was recently purchased by Aztec Industries out of Chattanooga. So now we've got Conoco, Rexcon, and the BMH line that all fall underneath the One Aztec umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So we're blessed with what we have, and the future is going to be very bright for what Southern Concrete Machinery is going to do, and a lot of the other Conoco dealers, Aztec dealers across the country.
I got you.
So you're selling admixes with master builders. You're getting guys on these, let's say 3-year contracts, just as a round number, and you got them locked in there, and you go after the next guy, and you keep pushing. But when you're doing these concrete plant sales, what's that? Once every 20 years, once in a lifetime of a property. What's that? What's the sales cycle like, and how often do you have a repeat customer?
That's a good question. The sales cycle, it could be a day. I mean, we've had conversations with people, and they're like, buy the concrete plant today. The longest sales cycle, I'll be delivering a concrete plant here end of October, 1st of November. But that sales cycle was close to 8 years.
Wow.
From the very first time that I quoted the gentleman to what it's going to be to deploy that asset was 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of perseverance to not give up,
Mm-hmm.
not just throw your hands in the air. And even during this process, there's always a code change or having to get an engineer to sign off on something. It can be arduous at times. But it's all about seeing the project through, because it's going to be the biggest concrete plant that I've ever personally been involved with. It's going to be an amazing piece of equipment to witness get erected, and it's going to batch out a lot of concrete.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to tell you, and how about once we get it up and erected, we'll do another episode, and we can share some videos and talk about that and show you how this poor little boy from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, was able to make this type of thing happen. I'm very proud of this particular project. So the vast majority of our customers, Paul, are repeat customers.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we handle our business, we try to treat everybody exactly the same, whether you're the biggest producer in North America or you're the smallest producer in North America. You're going to get our undivided attention. You may not like what we always have to say, but we're going to do everything that we can do to be above board and be point blank honest with you. And sometimes point blank honesty offends people, particularly businessmen. So we're always looking for avenues to grow at and be better. And that's probably a little bit of tactfulness may not hurt in that situation. But all of our customers, I have never sold a customer just one concrete plant. The overwhelming vast majority of those individuals are going to come back to us to buy another concrete plant. We've got a very good friend, customer north of Nashville, who ran a single plant operation and bought a concrete plant from us. and that completely changed their business model. We were able to produce twice the amount of concrete in half the amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so and he tells me all the time, whenever we're ready to do another again, you're exactly who we're coming back to. So it gives you a snapshot of what we're talking about there, because the way that we're going to go about managing our business, taking care of our customers, they're going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to come back. It's going to be a repeat customer.
Well, you've been involved in a few things that are, let's say historical. You were in that first CIM group. Things when we came in 2006, it was exactly like what you said, and the job offers were flying. They were begging people to come out for internships. Everybody that graduated had 2-3 job offers, legitimate, good paying, hardworking job offers. And then when Joey and I, and you saw this, you saw the Great Recession that happened in 2009. Joey and I, when we graduated, it was 2010, so things were a little strange. Mm-hmm. And then you also saw the COVID pandemic, and I don't know, what was it like as a business owner, and during that time of uncertainty in an industry that only seemed to take a pause for about 3 days, and then was rapid fire. I mean, what was that roller coaster of emotions like?
Well, I can tell you this: 2009, that was one of those days when I was thinking, "What in the Sam's hell have you done, Chris?" my W-2 in 2009 said $9,000. I mean, at that point in time, I was with Barnes Industrial. We were working, we were doing everything, and we would get calls, and I don't know. I'm pulling this date. Say it's August 8th, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Phone don't ring. The phone did not ring for 6 to 8 months. No one called.
Wow.
There was absolutely no reason. There was nobody going to be buying a concrete plant then.
Mm-hmm. They didn't want to drop $500,000 on.
Did not. Man, back then you could buy one for $500,000.
Yeah.
Back then. So let's forget about the Great Recession, because luckily we all got through. Let's talk about COVID. It went from being able to buy a concrete plant at $500,000 to it now costing $1.5 million.
Wow.
So was the biggest thing in COVID, was there was no way. I mean, the people, because we never really stopped during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did not stop. Our business was growing. People were putting up plants, but there was no way to get a hold of the inflationary increases.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would quote a guy a concrete plant today, and if he didn't buy it today, you call back in 3 days, hell, it may be $100,000 more.
Wow.
I mean, the increases were coming in from every angle. There was no way to get a hold of that. So that was obviously a challenge. You start having to go up, in those type of increments to any producer, they're going to have to take a step back and be like, guys, how do we assess this? So that was one of the most difficult, challenging 18 months to 2 months, and we still not gotten out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our lead times are still out far, and I can't necessarily say it's due to any COVID related supply chain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's due to the fact that there's that much work out there still, and it looks and appears to be, depending upon how certain situations go the next 6 months, that 26 and 27, you talked about predicting, I truly believe 26 and 27 to be the biggest years in ready-mix production that we've seen since 2004 to 2008.
Wow.
Before the Great Recession. I mean, I think we've gotten through a lot of the cement shortage issues. There's enough supply getting put up, enough terminals getting put up that's going to kind of subside that. But 26 and 27 look really good from our viewpoint out, based upon our conversations with the vast majority of customers from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, of their gearing up for big things. If we can drive these interest rates down another half a point and get some more developments out there, because lot space, particularly, let's talk about Middle Tennessee, there's still not enough lots, so the cost of development has went up exuberantly. And if we can get these interest rates down, you're going to see an unbelievable surge in ready-mix concrete production in late 25, 26, 27.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing you witness just explode, exponentially is the growth of your neighbors down there, just down the road, Smyrna Ready Mix. I mean, when we was in school, they just had a couple of plants. Now they got hundreds of concrete plants, and if it really takes off like you're saying, they might be positioned better than anybody.
Yeah, I mean, but definitely based upon the markets that they've grown into, and will continue to grow. That they're set up for a lot. There's no doubt. But with that being said, that those big fish create opportunities for little guppies to come in too. Mm-hmm. The big fish can't get all of them, and I don't care how big you are, you can't do everything.
And I only bring them up because you're there. Oakland High School. 20 minutes from 100%. Smyrna. So that's why I bring them up. Is you've seen some things. It's it's interesting. Coming a background of not knowing nothing about concrete, getting convinced to join a startup university degree, getting into the industry, and then you've witnessed about every 10 years seems like something magnanimous has happened that you've been a part of and on the front end of, and you could speak to. So. And just right down the road from you, you had a mom and pop company.
Great success story. They're good people. They're good family. They do a lot of stuff for the community locally. Good people. We wish them nothing but the best. But our job is to sell concrete plants. That's our job, and that's what we're passionate about. And we're going to put them up any and everywhere that we possibly can.
How'd you go about deciding on which brand concrete plant you were going to represent? Because you said Conoco. Now you've got more in your line, but originally it was just Conoco. So how in the world do you look at them and say, yeah, that's the one I want?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when I first took a job with Barnes, I really didn't know that difference that much. I just knew that I wanted to sell that. I wanted to sell that. I wanted to sell that item. I felt like that would enable me to have a little bit better lifestyle, and not be, and I'm going to use the term, not be nickel and diming people with other supplier type deal. I wanted to sell the piece of equipment. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know that much pertaining. I knew my good friends at Stevens. I'd seen their plants. With being in Texas, I'd seen a lot of Vince Hagen plants. The gentleman who I first... even before Jim and I had conversations in Fort Worth, I was out in Dumas, Texas, which is out close to up around the Amarillo area. And a gentleman by the name of Terry McCann, who just recently passed last year due to brain cancer. He was out of Katy, Texas. Great guy. He owned a company called CoServe. And I ran into him on a paving job. He had sold a company out in West Texas, a all-pro super central mix plant. And that was probably the first time that I was able to really understand that there was quality differences between manufacturers. Like when I was over there putting up the admixtures on that plant, you could look up and I could tell, it's like, this thing just looks different to me. So that was my first exposure to a Conoco was through Terry McCann. But I'd be lying to you, Paul, if I was to say that I had any idea in selecting the particular model or brand that I wanted to select. But I knew very quickly, after Jim and I had the conversations, he had made the job offer, and I had spoken to a few respected customers that I had across the country, and I told them what I was thinking about doing. And this is the comment that they had made back then is, the Conoco is the Cadillac. It's the top of the line piece of batch equipment you can purchase today. And I knew if my good friends and colleagues had made that comment to me, that I was probably on the right path. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't want to say that you was quitting an opportunity, a career position that a lot of people have to go sell a Yugo. Mm-hmm. I would not have wanted to do that. That would not have been a good scenario for me. But Conoco being known as the Cadillac piece of equipment, we've really been able to ride that wave based upon the historical perspective of Conoco being there since 1951, I believe. Mm-hmm. And the original Conoco Low Pro is still batch concrete every day. Couldn't tell you exactly the little town in Iowa that it's in, but it's been overhauled, but it still makes concrete every day. The original one from the 1950s.
Wow.
It's very cool.
Well, we can't get out of here without mentioning the CIM Patrons.
Yep.
We know you've been heavily involved with them for many, many years. What are the Patrons, and what are they up to right now?
The Patrons is a grassroots nonprofit 501c3 that was specifically created to be the conduit between Middle Tennessee State University and the industry, meaning that we wanted to make sure that we could control the funds that the industry raised and to be able to distribute it correctly into the CIM program. Because in any institution, academic institution, if you just put money into a general fund, you may not ever see that money.
Mm-hmm.
So the Patrons board back then had the vision of putting up a 501c3, and like I say, we're focused on being the conduit between academic and industry, academia and industry. So I have been a part of that board, that organization ever since I graduated, have been a past president, and I'm still very active in that. We're very proud of the fact that it is a truly an alumni-run association now. Mm-hmm. That was always the envisionment of the original Patrons, was to have the alumni take over that. And I can tell you that we run a very tight ship, and it's all run by volunteer at alumni time. Mm-hmm. So we put on our golf tournament every year in the spring. We put on our sporting clays event every fall. And our primary focus is to raise money for the CIM program at MTSU, to be a good steward of that money and to market and recruit more students to come into the program. And can't say enough about my good friend Jessie with Vertkin. She's really developed into a fine person, a fine lady, and her leadership these past 2 years has really thrusted us into an opportunity. And we got many ladies. We got Natalie Martin coming in right behind her. We're very proud of our women at the CIM program and where the degree has allowed them to go. Mm-hmm. And they're good stewards and are doing great things over at MTSU still.
Mm-hmm. When is the clay shoot? We set a date for that. It's usually in October, right?
It is October the 18th.
Okay.
October the 18th at Nashville Gun Club. Mm-hmm. 8 a.m. to 1.
Very good. Is that usually, that's still homecoming weekend? Is that still,
it normally is homecoming weekend. Homecoming weekend's late in September this year. Okay. We could not get it. We could not get that venue booked the same time. But I think next year we're going to maintain that being around homecoming.
Well, the last question we always ask is, what is the craziest thing you've seen on job site that you can tell?
I was about to say, because I can't. I probably some things we can't say on here, but I'd say one of the coolest things that I was a part of was there was a gentleman by the name of Ron Terrelong, great guy, brilliant quality control technician, and he was very much visionaries when I was with Master Builders in Fort Worth. And I'm trying to think of the contractor. There was a specific contractor who was building like their office headquarters. And they had come to Ron and was wanting to do a cast in place wall. And that was right when SCC was starting to come out. Everybody was talking about this new concrete mixture. And Ron and I developed an SCC mixture that we poured a 30-foot wall from the bottom. We pumped it from the bottom up 30 foot, slick. Man, I wish I could think of the contractors now. I can't think of it right now. Sitting on the west side of I-35, about 7-8 miles due north of Fort Worth. Can't miss it. And it's a funny story that the wall turned out beautiful. Like I want to say it's 150 yards or something. Mm-hmm. Absolutely gorgeous. Last 2 trucks, plant broke down. So you got this beautiful slick wall, no bug holes, no vibrators needed, but in the top, there's a cold joint where the plant broke down. And I was like, that wasn't a low pro, boys. That was not a low pro there. So that was that's probably the coolest thing that I could say on the podcast. That was there to kind of summarize and bring everything back. But I do want to finish. I know we got to go, but we didn't mention that something I'm very proud of is the World of Concrete auction that we put on every year. I was fortunate enough, myself, Austin Chaney, and Rick Yelton was playing at a golf tournament here in Murfreesboro, and we're talking about how we could raise money for the programs. And at that point in time, there was only one program, because I don't know if a lot of people know, but the expansion of the program came from MTSU. It came from Tom Cheatham and Austin Chaney and Dr. Heather Brown when we secured a National Science Foundation grant to expand the program. So we knew that the pool of money was going to get tight when there's other universities out there, because we were all starting to compete for funds. So we needed to have an idea of how we could raise a substantial. So we came up with this idea of doing an auction. Well, at that point in time, it had to be at the World of Concrete. So I took that bull by the horn. Matter of fact, Jim Amalong in the Barnes Industrial Group, probably wanted to fire me, because for 6 months I did not do anything but organize this auction, and I did it, essentially did it all myself, and got that set up. And I want to say that I may be off on these numbers, but I want to say we raised $337,000 that first year, which was amazing. I mean, just absolutely amazing. I got McNeilus to donate a truck. There was a lot of other peoples there, but that is one of, from a career perspective, that's something that I hold very high in regard, and I support it every day. Every year, I should say. I don't necessarily, I'm still not active on the calls because I got a business to run and I got things to do, but we support that auction by being there and purchasing equipment, purchasing packages, and doing all we can do by putting money into the auction. But that's something I'm very proud of. And if you're ever at the World of Concrete, please, that Wednesday of the week, please come to register and be a part of that auction. It does great things for the industry. It does great things for a lot of young men and women who are coming into the industry.
So that first year you raised $300,000. How much money did it raise this past year?
I'm gonna pull it. I'm gonna tell you it's about $1.7 million.
Wow.
And I mean, over the past, there's a lot of money that's been raised based upon that auction, and it all goes to good causes. It now goes to the National Steering Committee, where they're able to distribute those funds to all the 5 universities. Because we got, as you had mentioned, Paul, we got the New Jersey Institute of Technology, we got Texas State in San Marcos. We got Middle Tennessee State University. We got Cal State Chico, and we got the newest program out in South Dakota State University, which are all doing a very wonderful job. Muhammad up at NJIT is a great guy, doing a very good job there. We're just very proud of all of them, all the programs and their unique geographic territories, and how they're able to recruit, maintain, educate, and deploy good men and women out into our industry.
Yep. There's not many programs I can think of that have alumni as proud as ours. I mean, we are very proud of our CIM program.
Absolutely, as well we should be.
Yep. Paul, you got anything else for Chris before we bounce out of here?
No, it's a pleasure talking to you today, brother. And next time in the area, look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, come on down. We'll go get you some chicken wings like he and I had today.
Oh, yeah, we went to Buster's. Good old Buster's here in Murfreesboro. It's been here for probably 100 years or so. According to Chris, they've cleaned up their act compared to decades past.
They sure have.
Well, I haven't come down to campus to see the new concrete building yet, so that'll be my first stop.
Hey, how about October 1st and 2nd? Look at your calendar, because the National Steering Committee will be here having our meetings here this year. It'll be the first time that they've seen the building. I think it would be great for y'all to do a podcast from the building and have some of these National Steering Committee people on your podcast to talk about the program, the expansion of the program. It'd be great marketing for y'all, and it'd be great for the NSC to be able to do that.
Yeah, wow. Okay, yeah, nothing there. I don't have in October right now. The only thing that's booked is that following week or 10 days later is Concrete Works in RMC Concrete Works.
I'll be. We'll be in Colorado then.
We'll be there too. You have to come see us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure will.
All right, Joey.
But if y'all can make it down, I'll take care of y'all's hotels, getting y'all a place to stay here in Murfreesboro. And I think that'd be a great thing for everybody.
That sounds good to me.
Put it on the calendar, bro.
Let's do it.
Got it. Yes, sir.
All right, Chris, we'll let you get out of here and get to selling more concrete.
I ain't
plants.
going nowhere. You got to leave, man. You got to get out of here, dude.
We might have to talk some more bird hunting before I get out of here, but
we're gonna probably pour us a scotch here, Paul. Sorry, but you can keep drinking that LaCroix or LaCroix or whatever you got up there, buddy.
Well, what I'm more concerned about is you're gonna have Joey convinced to go sell concrete plants instead of Actigel. So just be careful, Joey. I can sense a salesman when I'm talking to one.
He did not realize this was a job interview.
he might, I don't know, man. He could probably tempt me with some more bird hunting, turkey hunting. I don't know.
He just said it was straight commission, brother. You go home and tell Chris about that.
Hey, it's a new world. If I could find somebody that would work for straight commission, we would do it in a heartbeat.
Hey, I know. I realize we are trying to leave. I got something for you though. My best friend growing up down in Birmingham, Alabama, been best friends our whole lives. One of the hardest workers you ever met. His whole life, he's always been frustrated because it didn't matter how much it doesn't matter how much harder he worked and everybody around him, he was still making the same $50,000-$60,000 a year, whatever job he was working. And finally, he just got fed up with it. Somebody told him that they were making, quite a bit of money selling insurance, and he thought I was a little silly. And finally, he said, "All right, I'll give it a try. It can't be any worse than where I'm working now. I'm fed up." So he got out instantly. First year, first time in his life where the more effort you put in, the more money you make out of it, and he's making high six figures. The first year, he don't even hardly know what he's talking about, and he's just raking it in. So I'm excited for a guy like that takes the bull by the horns and says, "You know what? I'll figure this out." Just impressive.
The sales game's hard. A lot of people just think it's glorious, and you live a lifestyle. But if you're not a self-starter, if you can't get up in the morning and focus on what you need to do to be successful, is like the greatest football coach ever says, 1% better every day. Get it. Roll Tide, baby.
Roll Tide, brother. Yeah.
So you got to get better every day. And even my, I'm a self-starter. I get up every day, but a lot of sales guys don't have that. There's a difference in a sales guy and an order taker. There's a big difference.
Yeah, we call them over here. We call them hunters and gatherers. There's guys that just want to gather POs, and there's guys that ain't afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody that don't know who they are or what they're talking about, and they're not afraid to shake their hand, look them in the eye, and say, "I got something you might be interested in," and if not, that's all right. But but by the time we finish this conversation, we'll have respect for each other.
100%.
And that's hard to do. That's real hard to do.
As much as I like getting told yes, I like getting told no too.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sets you back for a second, makes you hone on what you may have said differently, how you need to convey your message, because you will say yes eventually.
Mm-hmm.
You will say yes.
One of these days, we're gonna have a what we call Add 10 After Dark, where we share all the stories that can't fit into the PG podcast, and we'll have to share some stories of guys that some things they've told us, running us off their job sites.
I think that's definitely after 10 p.m.
All right, boys. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, and
yes, sir.
It's been fantastic, man.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.